Welcome, everybody, to Edge of the Rabbit Hole here on Connecting the Universe. I'm author and researcher Mike Ricksecker. With me, as always, my co-hostess, Victoria Mundae, and down in the chat room, Alina, moderating the chat. We have a fantastic episode coming up for you tonight. Eesha Patel joins us. She is an energy healer, spiritual coach, and she is the person to help guide people to galactic connections and first contact. We're going to be talking about galactic communication this evening, and I am really, really excited about that because, Eesha, you talk about this in regards. We're just going to dive right in. You talk about this in regards to using the consciousness, and I am a big believer that we're underutilizing consciousness, that we can use it for many, many things. Yes, galactic communication, time travel, and many things. So please tell us about your research in this area.
Yeah, absolutely. So just this little bit of backstory here. So I have
Sure.
been in contact with the galactic beings for about 10 years now. So that's kind of where it started. It started off with me being an experiencer. I had the contact. I had to find my way through the contact experiences, make sense of it, find meaning in it, discover a lot of the history and background of the galactic races and the history that people don't talk about. So I've done that for quite some time. Now, more recently, just within the last few months, I started doing my PhD where I'm really diving into what is the mechanic behind intergalactic communications. So I'm doing that under a noetic sciences study program. And my first paper that I've written as part of that is called Intergalactic Communications, the Role of Consciousness in Communication with Non-Human Intelligences. And so it kind of takes people through this journey of, really looking at what is contact beyond just the physical sense. And there are a lot of people out there who they're looking through telescopes and they're trying to find signs of extraterrestrial life. And it's fantastic. But where the research is landing, and I know people like Ross Coulthart, David Grush, some of the more sort of disclosure side of people and journalists are now talking about this idea that what if it's not extraterrestrial? What if it is in fact interdimensional? What if the methods by which we make contact need to get revised? What if we put down those telescopes and start investigating our own consciousness as the possibility and the means for this contact to occur? So that's really what we're looking at.
Yeah, and that is incredible because a lot of my work goes down the interdimensional route. In that, yeah, I mean, sure, there are going to be extraterrestrial civilizations all across the cosmos, certainly, but there are other beings that are living right alongside us here on Earth. That one of the terms would be like ultra terrestrial rather than extraterrestrial. Of course, we've been using the term interdimensional as well. So, how in your research in this paper that you've written, how does one go about using their consciousness to communicate and interact with these beings?
So there's a few mechanics behind that, and of course, over the course of the next few years, I will be unpacking many of these different ways. The one that I've discussed in this paper focuses on telepathy, and this is actually backed off some research by a guy called Rainero Hernandez. You may know him, Ray. He's fantastic. He did a study a few years ago where he interviewed over 3,500 participants and landed on this conclusion that telepathy is one of the primary forms of contact, not the only form, but one of the primary forms of contact. And so that's really what my paper looks at. It looks at how and why telepathy is possible, what in our modern research from a philosophical sense and also in a scientific sense could make it possible. And so there's three theories of consciousness that I discuss, and some of them are a little bit older, some of them are a bit newer, but essentially what they all do is they say, look, the old physicality, the old methodology that we've been considering, the way that we live our lives, is probably outdated. Now, a classic example of this backs off some of the near-death experience research, which says that back in the day, we would have expected or assumed that, in a physicalist or materialist sense, if we were to have a near-death experience and we assume that every time we have a vivid or big experience of something, there's actually more mental activity. That's old school science. It says there's more activity in the brain. You should be able to capture it in the senses. What they found in a lot of cases was it was actually the opposite. Then found this with psychedelics as well, with some research around psychedelics and the way that it impacts the brain. It actually is an increase in absence of activity. It's an increase of nothingness.
Hmm.
So when you have a near-death experience, not only is there not more activity in the brain, there's more nothingness activity in the brain. So what's actually happening is you're entering a state where less is happening, but the experience is more visceral. How is that possible if everything is created inside our minds?
That's interesting because I know with transcendental meditation, they try to get you to like completely clear your mind so you're not thinking of anything. Is that similar in vein?
Yeah, well, this is where one of the theories of consciousness comes in. And I really love that there are already theories around this that I don't have to reinvent them. But one of them is called the filter theories of consciousness. It's been around for a little bit. People have been talking about it since at least the 80s, 90s, but it's gained more popularity in the last 10 to 20 years. So filter theory of consciousness says that consciousness is vast. There's this big, big consciousness all around us, right? We are the consciousness. We are part of the consciousness. It really comes from this idea that there's one consciousness. And when we interact in our human self with this one consciousness, there is a filter that we have in place. And the filter is necessary. You want to drive a car, you don't need to know what's happening on Mars. You just don't. You need to be focused. You need to be here. You need to be present. It actually
Right.
helps you to do your day-to-day human task. When you're cooking, you don't want to be burning the stove while you're figuring out what's happening in another dimension. It's just not necessary. So the filter actually helps us be human. There is a value in it, right? But when you are trying to make contact with your interdimensional friends, with our intergalactic family, that's when reducing the filters, having that lessened down, allows you to receive more from the world. And so there is this theory that when you're having a near-death experience, you release the filter. So that's why it makes sense that there's not more activity in the brain. There's actually less happening because the brain filters everything. And so when you reduce the filter, more of the actual consciousness can come in. Same when you do psychedelics, which I don't condone, but it has been proven scientifically that that is a mechanism. And my favorite is through meditation. So when we meditate, when we go into the stillness, things like transcendental meditation, Buddhist meditation, the inner heart meditation, which I teach, there's elements in there where you drop out of your head, you drop into your heart space, you drop into consciousness. Now your filter gets reduced and you're able to receive more. And this is how people are able to get downloads and contact. When people do CE5, you always start with a meditation, a little spiritual practice, right? So that is one of the theories of why we might be able to, through stilling our mind and things like transcendental meditation, as you mentioned, reduce the filter and actually make contact.
Yeah, and that makes perfect sense. And I know Victoria's ears perked up when you said CE5 because I know she's been looking a lot into that. You have been.
You read my
Victoria.
mind. I have, yeah, about a year and a half now.
Yeah. So given that, because a lot of people talk about connecting with source and these types of ideas, and I do believe that everything is connected. Then what do you think the universe is actually comprised of? Just pure consciousness and energy?
Yeah, I absolutely do believe that. And, call me cheesy, but if you wanted to put a word on it, I would say it is creator, God, source. There is some word for that that explains the vastness, the allness of all that is. So it is this vast consciousness. And I'm not saying that it's out there. I'm saying we also must then be that consciousness, because if there is only one consciousness, I must be some part of that. And one of the other theories that I love so much is analytical idealism, which gives this idea of consciousness being this river, like a river of consciousness. And inside that river, we have these discrete experiences, more localized discrete experiences. And he calls them whirlpools. So like I'm one of the whirlpools in the river. You guys are other whirlpools in the river. And right now, our discrete whirlpools are interacting with each other and with the audience. So that's an example of how you can have within a vast consciousness, you can still have localized discrete experiences that can communicate with each other. And again, within that theory, well, if I'm a whirlpool and an Arcturian being is a whirlpool, why can't we interact if we're in the same river? So suddenly it opens up the possibility that these connections can happen with humans.
Yeah, I like the fact that you use the term whirlpool, because when we start talking about like things like vortex energy and all of that, the ancient symbol for like portals and these sorts of things was the spiral, which we find all over the world. So my brain immediately goes, oh, okay, making connections, whirlpool, spiral, these sorts of things. So that said, then when we're talking like the idea of maybe a portal or something like this, is that something that doesn't necessarily mean we have to physically pass through it, but we could actually go to perhaps like an ancient site of power that has that energy and just pass through that portal with our consciousness rather than physically?
Oh, absolutely. And I've been to so many of these sacred sites. I mean, very, very early on in my journey, my earliest contact back in 2015, one of the first things they said to me was pack your bags and go to Mount Shasta.
Yeah.
So I'm very well familiar with the power of these energetic portals and the sightings that can happen. More recently, last year, I was in Uluru speaking again at the Cosmic Consciousness, which I do from time to time, and they have a CE5 as part of their event. So we went out, and my God, we had so many sightings in Uluru, and it's a very sacred site here in Australia. So I think absolutely. I mean, you can also have contact in your backyard, which I also have. Just go outside and you see it. So there's that aspect of it, but I think being on sacred sites where the ley lines, have more energy, there's more power there. Definitely can help to amplify the spiritual experiences that you can have.
Yeah, and I'm totally on board with that. I mean, yeah, you can do it anywhere, but going to those ancient sites of power that have, the ley lines and the telluric currents and all the energetic nodes, all of that definitely helps to amplify. So let me also ask you this, because there's a lot of different things that people do, whether it's CE5 or some other different things like remote viewing or astral projection. How does those sorts of things relate to this?
It's really interesting, and it's something that I have thought about from a few different angles. One of the theories that I've come up with around this, and this is just coming from my personal understanding of how dimensions work. So we view one dimension lower than the one that we're in, and we can physically observe that. You walk outside, you look at a tree, you see the tree, but you don't see the back of the tree. The only reason the back of the tree is there, or the back of the house, or the back of anything, the only reason it's there is because at some point you've either walked around it and you've seen it, or because you've seen other trees and other references in the past, and so well, if I can see the front of the tree, I must recognize there must be a back, because I know all trees have a backside. So, right. So there's something that happens in the brain where it kind of fills in the rest of the 3D reality. And from what I understand about babies, actually, is they don't see that until at least several months of life, because at the beginning they're just seeing sort of shapes and patterns, and they're trying to piece everything together. Right. And then later they figure out, because they get enough reference points to know, oh yeah, like if this is why you can play peekaboo with children. You cover their eyes, suddenly you're gone, like you're not there anymore. It's only on the memory to sort of have that concept. So it's a little bit like that. But basically, we view in one dimension lower than the one that we're in. Mm-hmm. So we view in the third dimension, we view in 2D. If you were to take your consciousness up a dimension into the fourth dimension, this is typically the mechanism by which a lot of psychics, remote viewers, they're able to access from that point a different reference for time and space. And if you were to step out of the 3D, go into the 4D, and almost look down in the 3D, then you can do things like see into a house, even though you're not physically there. You can have visions like a hologram, almost like a house, or things like impressions when you're doing remote viewing. You can get all of that by stepping your frequency up. Mm-hmm. Now, time, when you view from the 4D down into the 3D, this is where people get this idea of multiple parallel lifetimes or multiple parallel realities, because and if we step up another step, you go into the 5D, and a lot of my work is around 5D consciousness. So you talk about 5D, which is a unified field. Inside that unified field, the experience of dimensions and reality is quite different. We experience linear time here in the 3D, and that's necessary, past, present, and future. It's just part of the way that we experience human life. In 5D, it's a little bit different. This is where people talk about manifestation and things like that as well, right? When you come in to the 5D, it's like you are at the center point and reality converges based on the frequency that you put out. So you emanate a frequency, you see that frequency back. And some people now talk about this in the context of law of attraction, manifestation. What you put out is what you get back. So there's that context behind it. But from a contact perspective, it's also you put out a signal that then allows you to receive a frequency back. And a lot of these beings interact from that heart space frequency, the benevolent ones. Of course, there's lots out there, but we connect with the high vibrational beings. So we send out love vibration, and the beings that vibrate with that, they come towards us. Now, when you're in the 5D, and you were to look down on the 4D, you might actually see time as more of a spiral, because things are not so linear. Things are not so set. And from that space, you can do things like quantum leaping, quantum jumping, looking at future timelines. And some of the work that I do is working with planetary ley lines, but also looking at potential timelines, like through the Order of Melchizedek, who they're a group of high vibrational beings, and some of their work is related to timelines and looking at the ascension timeline for the planet. So when you're in the 5D and higher, you can look at the ascension timeline. You can see, all right, this is the bigger picture. This is where humanity is headed. What can I now do with that? How can we influence that? How can we shift our vibration to become a part of the greater ascension? So
and that's a lot of the work that I do with time, and being able to access time, each moment its own frequency, and basically the idea of using the consciousness to be able to access those different frequencies, those different moments, and actually being able to view that. So what does that say for like trying to contact some of these beings that might be in a completely different moment in time?
Well, this is it. I mean, when we're in that 5D and higher consciousness, time, it's still, everything is very still. There isn't that past, present, future. And so you can connect with beings outside of time and space. And this is where the interdimensional theory kicks in. They're not in another time, they're not in another space, they're in another dimension. They're in another frequency completely. So how do you tap into that? Well, through our consciousness. One of the metaphors I like to use here is around this idea of a radio station. Right? I mean, when we tune into different radio stations, you've got this program, and if you listen to one radio station, you're going to get a series of songs and programs and maybe a breakfast channel and talk show, whatever else they have, right? But if you've only ever listened to one channel your whole life, and that channel is called 3D, right? You're only ever going to get the programming that is in that channel. So if you want to experience a different program, if you want to experience a different reality, connection with different beings, you have to tune to a different frequency. And that's where this idea of raising your vibration, and some of it's spiritual, new age, I get it. But conceptually, a lot of it does make sense in light of some of the theories of consciousness, because when you shift your frequency, now you can access a different paradigm of reality and connecting with the beings, where you just tune into it. You tune into that energy, and that connection is now suddenly possible.
Yeah, I know Victoria has a lot of questions, and Victoria, I'll let you have that.
I'm still, I'm absorbing all this. Well, still absorbing. Okay.
Yes, no, it's absolutely fantastic. So let me ask you this then: when people have like what we might call an abduction experience, where they've gone onto a kind of quote unquote mothership, I've always believed, or at least I've been believing for the last several years, that is more of some sort of interdimensional experience, because they have people report time loss experiences and things like this. So is this more of, rather than physically going on to the mothership, or 150 years ago it was into the fairy realm and this sort of thing, rather than actually physically going there, is it more of just the consciousness is going there to maybe visit the beings or whatever's going on?
There's a few different camps in this one. One of them is that it's consciousness only travel, but a very, very small percentage have actually reported physical travel as well, where their body has been taken up into these places where sometimes even against their will, things have happened. And if that's the situation, there's a different set of conversation we can have around that, about sovereignty and saying no, because you do get to have that free will. So yeah, in majority of cases of what I've heard, it's that your consciousness is moving into a space where you can now experience. And I'll tell you the way that I experience it. And I know this is different for everyone, but the way that it happens for me is, so I have what I would call soul aspects who are in these different dimensional spaces. One of my soul aspects is a fifth dimensional being, and her name is Lily. I've been in contact with her for about 10 years, although much longer, because when I was a little girl, I used to say things like, oh, if I have a daughter, I'm going to call her Lily. I'm like, where did that come from? And then, of course, in the process of my spiritual awakening 20 years later, I realized, I was like, oh, I must have been connecting with that Lily being, one who's been guiding me my whole life. So she's a fifth dimensional soul aspect. And, so when I connect through her, I mean, she is on board a starship called the Aru Terra. So in her higher soul form, she's actually there. But because she's a soul aspect of mine, we have the same higher self. And within that higher self, you can connect with many of your different soul aspects. And that is one very effective way of expanding your knowledge base, because through Lily, I can learn about what's going on the starship. I can see what missions they're doing. I can get information. So when I'm channeling through her, my body's right here on Earth. I'm not going anywhere, but my consciousness is able to connect through that. And that's where the barriers sort of dissolve, and me and her can merge together energetically, and she can experience my world. I can experience her world.
Fantastic. Okay, Victoria, I know you have a lot of questions, so go ahead. I'll let you have a turn.
I don't even know where to start. You hit on every question. You're like a fragment of every question I wanted to ask you. So let me start by asking you a really dumb question. Okay. Explain this to me, Lucy. Okay. So many people talk about connecting with the galactic family or the galactic dimension, all that kind of stuff. Is that actually like, and I'm going to go to Star Trek, is it like the Federation where it's just a group of emissaries going out? Or is it Jim Bob Joe from some planet who happens to be out cruising the galaxy and you hook up with them? Who are you speaking to?
That's a really great question, and it varies so much from person to person, and and that's something I say as well. Is like, if I was to call China and like somebody in China picks up, like, who am I talking to? And having that discernment is so important. But let me tell you what's most common. Most common would be you're connecting with a soul aspect or a family group that you already have some level of connection with, because that's the easiest, right? And one thing that I do encourage my students is, when you're making contact, always connect to your higher self first, because your higher self is that overlighting energy that you are encompassed in. And when you expand into your higher self form and you have that connection, now you're going to connect with the beings that are of the most resonant, of the benefit, the ones that make sense. So that sort of will prevent you most likely from contacting the random somebody from somewhere that's like completely, just like, what are we even doing here? So, so there is that level of discernment that I think is important. Now, from my personal experience side of things, the very first group that I connected with was the Arcturian Council of Light. I didn't know it was the Arcturian Council of Light because I didn't have the discernment and the refinement to know at that time who that energy was. They called themselves a Council of Light, but they gave me a series of sacred geometries. And it was like maybe a year or two later down the track that I realized, I'm like, oh, it must be Arcturian, because the geometries themselves are classically Arcturian with triangles and all that. So it's a bit of a piecing together sometimes. So if you get a little bit of information. So the first bit of information I got was just, we're a Council of Light, and it stayed like that for like a year before I realized, oh, I'm dealing with Arcturians.
Okay. That's good, because I understand that. Okay, so when you connect with your soul aspect, can that be fragmented? Are there like 15 different aspects? And what am I trying to say? You connect with one, like Lily, like you and Lily connect, but the rest of your soul aspect is together somewhere else. Can you connect to the others?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've connected with several of my soul aspects. In fact, I discovered years down the track that I have an Arcturian soul aspect who is connected to the Arcturian Council, and obviously makes sense. And then I was able to connect with the Arcturian Council. So as you sort of expand, and this is the journey of discovery of self, right? Like, a lot of people start the spiritual journey because they want to know, who am I? Who am I really? Not this identity, not this ego, but who am I really? And so for me, part of that journey was, oh, I'm actually like a multidimensional being being, and I've got all of these soul aspects, and I may not need to know all the thousands of the aspects in this lifetime, because again, that filter has a purpose. You're only going to get the bits that are relevant for the mission or the work that you're doing here. So for me, it was the Arcturian self that came through first, which I discovered later on down the track. But, when you sort of look back on it, you go, oh, that's how that would have happened. Because I had that Arcturian connection inside of me, in my soul, through my higher self. And so it made sense that I was able to, at that point, very easily get those downloads of the Arcturian technologies, the sacred geometries, through that connection that I had with the Arcturian council, through the soul aspect. So, lots and lots. I've got an angelic self. I've got heaps.
So it's like an emergency phone tree. You just keep going. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, I sometimes explain it. It's like you see this palm of the hand, right? So like I've got this thumb. Let's say this thumb here is Eesha. This one here is Lily. This one here is Anahera, my angelic self. This one is Anashita. She's my Arcturian self. I've got lots and lots and lots. But what that common thread is, so the palm of the hand, I would then say that's like the higher self. So you connect from the Eesha self to the higher self is the first point. And from here, now you can access the rest of them. So that makes it a lot easier to then go into the expansion, into higher self, because all of your soul aspects that are part of your soul energy would be under this overarching overlighting of the higher self light. So when you expand into that, now, okay, you can connect to all of those multidimensional soul aspects and your galactic family.
Wow, that's going to take a lot of time. I have to work that in my schedule. Okay.
It doesn't have to. It's very simple.
Well, for you, maybe, but I'm down here in the. Oh, never mind. Anyway,
well, how easy is it for somebody to start doing this?
Very simple. My students do it in 12 weeks.
In 12 weeks?
12 weeks. If you start today.
12 weeks, and it's EeshaPatel.com, which we do have the link down in the description.
Yeah, actually, it's 5days to 5D.com is our introductory event.
There we go.
And but yeah, EeshaPatel.com. You can find us on socials. We have a course, a 12-week course that we run. It's called the Inner Heart Journey, and inside of that, I teach the very specific meditation that helped me to expand my heart energy and to make galactic contact. And we do see students within a matter of weeks who make contact. So it's not as mystical as you might think. We did mystify that. We put it into a process, into a structured process that almost anyone can do.
Cool. Okay, I have two questions. It's kind of the same question, but they're not the same question because they're on different dimensions. Ooh. Okay. I've been doing CE5 for about 1.5 years, and we're not seeing things up in the air anymore. We're seeing things on the ground, like just at the edge of the shadow. We're seeing stuff. When I bring a friend along, and I really see, you can see I'm struggling with words. How do I explain to them that you have to be open, you have to be willing to see things that you've never seen before, you have to be willing to experience what you've never experienced before, but yet you have to stay grounded and protected? How do you teach someone that? That's the first part. And the second part is, how do I know I'm really connecting with something and it's just not the woo-woo in my head going around, because I'm thinking of, Boy George songs or something, and it's just connecting like that. I don't even know where that came from.
Okay, so for the first question, exactly as you just said it, I think you described it perfectly. You do need to open yourself up while keeping your feet on the ground. And sometimes there are practical practices that can help you with that. One of the things that I do on a regular basis is I practice the 4 foundations, it's a 4-step meditation, which again, if anyone wants it, reach out to us in our team. We will gift it to you. If you want it, Mike and Victoria. Yes. It's that process, and you start by expanding your heart energy. So we call this the heart star, or the starlight, the inner starlight. You expand that inner heart star from the inside out, expand it outwards, and that creates this uplifting in your field. I call this like the version of my energetic shower. Like, how we take a physical bath every day? I shower every day, right? So this is the energetic bath. You give yourself an energetic bath on a regular basis, and that cleans your energy field. Because when we go out and about, we're doing stuff. Who knows what we pick up, or who knows what we interact with? So on a daily basis, you cleanse your energy field. And then you strengthen that with the golden apple or the golden Taurus practice. And so you bring that golden light, liquid light, in from source through the crown into the heart, and you expand that Taurus field outwards. Some of you who are energetically sensitive might be able to feel it even as I'm saying it, because I'm doing it as I'm saying it, right? So you can feel the practice as it starts to radiate, and now you have this very solid energy field. And when it comes to protection, the golden apple is one of the best things for that. Although one thing that I do say is the word protection is something I'm very mindful to not use at times, because the thing is, it's all about frequency. So instead of trying to protect myself with a barrier, what I'm actually doing is I'm just lifting up my energy field to maintain a higher field that is naturally going to attract the types of beings that I want to communicate with. So I'm using my energy, I'm using the frequency of the field to maintain the sovereignty. And that's what it is. We have this sovereignty as human beings, right? So when we lift our vibration, we are saying, this is my vibration, this is my light, and only things of that light may come towards me. And that takes a lot less energy than constantly trying to ward off bad energies, which is much more of a 3D concept. So we lift up into that higher vibration, and we naturally resonate with the loving beings, the loving energies. And in fact, just those 2 steps, and there's 2 other parts in the practice, which if anyone wants that, I can send it out. But the first 2 parts alone, cleanse your energy field, uplift your energy field, you're already in a better space for CE5 contact. So and the next part is being mentally open in your heart. The heart star builds your heart energy too. So you've already done that. Your heart is open, your energy field is uplifted, and you're grounded too, because you've connected into Gaia, you've connected up to Earth. That's another part of the full foundation. So we do that connection point as well. And then we're ready to make contact. So that's the first part of your question. Now, coming to the second question that you had was, how do I know, that it's not just me making it up? Well, to that I say, what if you are? and you have to, well, just embrace it. I mean, the thing is, like, imagination plays a really big role in the way that we experience reality. So when something is real or not real is going to depend upon the perception that you put on it. Again, going to the theories of consciousness, how do you know if something was created inside of you or outside of you? And in many instances, in contact work, it is a combination of both. Because when you open up your mind and your energy, you have to believe it to see it, right? So you believe it, and then you manifest that physical contact experience. Now, the thing that gets really interesting is when multiple people start having a similar experience, because you've now co-created it. And so you can rule out the fact that it's something that's a figment of the imagination, because now you're seeing a physical reality of that. But that actually tells us something about how reality works. And it tells us that we did create that through our consciousness, through our energy. And so in that regard, we actually did make it up and manifest it into physical form. Fantastic, right? Doesn't that tell us a lot about how the world works?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we call that the energy donut down here in Texas. We don't do the golden apple.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I love that.
We have donuts here. Okay. That makes a lot of sense, because now I forgot my question.
All right. While you're remembering the question, we do have a question out of the chat. Yep. So Sarah Yusuf asks, what type of messages do you usually receive from these entities? Have they provided any guidance on better communication?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I get so many downloads from these different beings. And early on, it was from the Acturians. So they were giving me messages or geometries, actually. It was very specific visual pictures, but they contained a lot of information about healing. So I spent a long time as an energy healer. I don't do so much of that work now, because now I teach people how to make contact. So I'm more down that end of the road now. But I mean, the geometries they gave me, they heal people. I had people in my rooms kind of have spontaneous healings, and their life would turn around, and transformational work. I did that for such a long time. And so they gave me a lot of information about how we as humans can evolve, how we can uplift, how we can do things differently, how we can work with galactic technologies. So that was part of, and I still get a lot of that stuff now. But in relation to the second part, about have they told me about how to better communicate? And yes, I have had a lot of conversations about this, because the old school way of communication was channeling, and people are still doing it. It's fine. But channeling, you essentially, and I used to be a trance channeler, so I know this very well. You get your consciousness out of the way and you allow the being to come into you, and then they speak through you. They use your voice. And in some instances, people's voice would change. Like I know Bashar and a few other like famous channelers to do that. Their voice would change. They don't anymore. Even Bashar's channeling has changed a lot. It's evolved from this. And so that used to be considered the way that communication would happen. And I used to do this too. I trans-channeled for a good couple of years until I learned about discernment. And when I dropped into my inner heart space, which is it's a portal of contact, when I go into my inner heart through this meditation and I access my inner temples, one of the first things that Archangel Michael said to me was, stop doing channeling. Stop. He said, there are better ways to communicate. He said, look, we are having a communication right here like this. You are there. I am standing in front of you in this shared space of consciousness. I do not need to enter your energy field. He said, and he even said, any high vibrational being of light, if they don't have to, they will not upset the sovereignty of your field. They won't enter it. Archangel Michael said, I will never come through you like that. He said, because if we can communicate like this, he said, you are maintaining the sovereignty of your field and we can still communicate. I can tell you everything I need to tell you. And we have the sovereignty of the human body. And that was game changer for me. So I then started to shift my whole practice out of trance channeling into more of a direct communication through the heart, where I can still receive all the messages and relay all the messages, but I'm still fully present. And that's really important as we evolve as a human race, to be able to make contact without being in some half asleep state where we don't even know what's going on, you know? So it's getting ourselves out of the trance, awakening from the trance, being in a fully lucid, fully conscious state where the communication is happening through the heart center and through the consciousness.
Okay, wait, now we got back to this up a second. I live alone with a cat. The cat speaks, but he doesn't speak very many words. But sometimes I will go through my day and I will find myself just answering questions like, no, it was over here. I didn't hear anything. I'm not aware of anyone asking me a question, but I'm just coming out with answers. What the heck is that? Is it just me being alone with a cat, or is this a form of communication? Or
look, animals have been known to have telepathy, and there are books written on the subject about animal telepathy. In fact, I think it was Rupert Sheldrake that he's one of the sort of proponents of that. And yeah, so there are studies that talk about telepathy in animals and how we can communicate with them. So, I mean, at the end of the day, the only person who's going to know the truth of that experience is you, because you know that you're having the experience. And so one thing that is recommended in that instance is to start journaling some of the experiences that you're having, so that you can start to integrate the process of what's going on. And as these puzzle pieces come together, you start to make sense of this over a longer period of time.
Okay, because I'll hear myself say things like, well, you're right, I didn't know it was over there. I'm like, well, who am I talking to? I didn't hear a question. Anyway, maybe it's not, I've been living alone too long.
Well, sometimes it's the cat, but sometimes, and this is why I would like you maybe to like, it would benefit you to go and have a deeper exploration of this, because sometimes we talk to our guides like that too. So whether it's the cat or not, like you'd probably need a little bit more information. But sometimes what I find is like I'll talk to my guides like that sometimes, like my angelic guides or my galactic guides or galactic family. They'll say something to me and then I'll think something and then I'll be like, wait, like what just happened? And so that telepathic exchange, that is a sign of contact. What you're missing right now is who the contact is with. And that's that discernment piece of who's actually on the other side of that line, right? You asked, is it just Jimbo from whatever, or, am I talking to a counselor? Yeah. And that's the exploration is how do we go in and actually discover that? And one of the things you can do is you can sit in meditation with the intention to discover the identity of that energy that's coming through. And then maybe you'll get a name, maybe you'll get a color, maybe you'll get an impression of what that is. You may discover that it's your cat, or you may discover that it's actually your higher self or angelic guide. So that's part of the exploration.
Okay, I have one more question and I'll release the floor.
Oh, you're good.
Because I know Mike wants to jump back in. I've heard that the Earth is fragmenting. We're shifting timelines. Some are going here, some are going there. Some are going to, Dairy Queen, and others are going to a nice fancy restaurant. I really want an ice cream cone. What happens if a large part of the population is not ready for this kind of contact? They're not willing to accept it. Are they going to, what's a nice way of saying it, diminish, become a denser energy? Or is that just their own reality they're going to live in from now on?
First of all, that concept of the split Earth, It's just by very definition is not a 5D concept. And it's sad that people are really propagating this as truth, but it's a very fourth dimensional way of looking at ascension, because 5D, by definition, 5D is unified field consciousness. It includes unity. As soon as you have a split earth, you're no longer in 5D. That's it. The concept itself is not 5D because you're splitting. So in unified field consciousness, in a 5D ascension, which is what we're moving into, we're actually going from 3D, skipping past the 4D, which is a very polarizing field, into the 5D. In 5D, it is a unified field, and all souls who are ready for it are going to come. And of course, that still leaves the question, and it is a very 3-4D question of what happens to the other souls. If you're looking at it through a 5D lens of perception, what you see is all the souls who are ready to experience 5D, experience that 5D living. From that perspective, it might look like the other souls are leaving or dying, or whatever word you want to put on it, but the soul is eternal. What happens is they simply go and have an experience of vibrational resonance somewhere else. They're not going to diminish. How can a soul diminish? It's not possible. It's just choices. The soul makes choices. So the souls that will choose, and if people are on earth right now, they've chosen to be a part of the ascension. We all have. All of us have chosen to be a part of it, right? And so we're here. We've chosen to be here. On some level, we agreed to be here. Seems crazy sometimes, right? But we did actually agree to be here, right? Despite everything going on in the world, we did actually agree to be here. And so we're here for the ride. And as the planet continues to lift, the souls that want to have that journey, that want to continue the 5D experience, will simply stay in that experience. And the souls who don't, they will find an experience that is of resonance for them. Maybe they want to have a lesson somewhere there. Maybe they want to experience a vibration that will no longer be possible in 5D Earth. And so they go somewhere else and have that experience. And it's perfectly okay. No one is diminishing like that whole concept. It's not 5D. And you know what it does? It just puts fear, because then people think, my friends and family aren't going to make it. And what am I going to do? It puts people in a state of tension. And fear itself is a lower vibration.
It's a low vibe. Yeah.
People don't buy that story. It's absolute rubbish. We're in 5D. We focus on our energy. We focus on the vision. We focus on the new earth. That's how we lift ourselves up every day into that vibration. And the people who are going to come will come, and trust that. Trust the perfection in the divine plan, because there is one. We experience it every day through synchronicity, through magic. We experience high vibrational living. And when you're in that vibration, suddenly it's like, yes, you see how the universe works. You see the connection between our inner worlds and the external reality. And it's perfect. It's fine. Everything's going to be fantastic. And the friends that want to come with you for the ride, they'll be there. They'll be there.
Okay, I lied. I have another question.
Yeah, this actually goes right into my next question. You may have answered it somewhere in there, because that was absolutely wonderful. I loved how you stated all of that. Because so much of the world is living in that fear vibration. You just turn on the news and there it is. So how do we use all of this? How do we use this communication? How do we use consciousness? How do we use all of these different tools at our disposal to help evolve humanity?
That is a question I get asked all the time. And the first thing I have to say is, what if we didn't use it? Let me just frame this in the sense of, would I ring my mother only every time I needed something, or do I ring my mother because I love her and she's my mother? So when it comes to making contact with our galactic family, what if there wasn't a use for it? What if we went in with the frame that these are our family, these are our people, and we want to connect first and foremost from a place of love? That is the first starting point. That's why I do contact work. I don't need anything from them. It comes from a place of love. They love us too, by the way. They love us unconditionally. They don't ask us for anything. They don't say, oh, Eesha, I'm only going to make contact with you when you're helping us with X, Y, Z. And I do planetary with them. I do help them. There is a synergy there. There is a mission I do and all that. But it comes from a place of love. And this idea of, I'll only make contact if it's going to be useful for humanity, it's a very low vibrational concept, because it's not unconditional. So let's firstly lift that frame and say, let's connect from a place of love. Now, when you do connect from a place of love, there are plenty of benefits to be had. Like, for example, learning about their technologies. When I sit down and I talk with my mom, maybe I'll gain some wisdom from her. Maybe I'll learn something. Maybe she'll teach me a recipe. But that's not, I don't go to her house just to learn the recipe. It's just something that happens afterwards. Maybe when we make communication and contact with our Arcturians and the Galactic Federation and the Councils of Light and the Pleiadians. And first and foremost, it's from the joy, it's from the love. And secondly, it could then be maybe they'll teach us something, maybe they'll show us something, maybe they'll give us information. All of those things are going to happen, but let's embrace it and let's have the starting point as a love-based relationship.
Okay, that makes sense. So just naturally occur over time as we keep these conversations going.
Exactly, because they do love us. They do. There's so much love I receive from Star Family. Although I will say, if you ever connect with Ashtar, he comes in very like, right, we've got a mission to do. he can sometimes come through with that kind of energy, and I've had that with some of my students as well. Where, yeah, I mean, he's a beautiful soul, very loving. But in one of my sessions, literally, it was this person's second session that we ever had, and I was, taking them into the inner heart. Suddenly, Ashtar comes in, he's like, right, gotta go, got a thing to do. So sometimes there is a work-based kind of relationship there as well, and it's for the uplifting of humanity. It's for I mean, there's a lot they do behind the scenes to support us, and so if we can work with them on that, then there is that synergy there as well.
Okay, now how is this similar or different to, say, because I've done a lot of work with ancient civilizations like ancient Egypt, and of course they had connections to Sirius and these sorts of places. So how does the I guess methodology or the way that we are doing things now similar or different to the way things were done then, and is this just kind of a rediscovering of methods from the past?
That's a really good question. I think in a lot of ways, a lot of the things that we perceive and even like, things that we channel and download and things like that, sometimes it's old forgotten knowledge that we're gaining back. And I do believe that a lot of these ancient races, like the Egyptians and Macedonians and a lot of, ancient Greeks, like a lot of them had access to ancient wisdom and knowledge. Even the indigenous people here in Australia, they talk about connection with star beings. There's an African tribe, the Dogon tribe of Mali. Yeah. They're quite known because of their connection with the Syrians, and they knew about Sirius B before we had right? And how would you know that? I mean, their explanation is that, well, it's just because the beings told us. They came out and told us, Yeah. So like their explanation is very simple, So yes, I do believe that there is this ancient knowledge. I also feel like in some aspects there's an evolution happening as well, where we're learning things that maybe we didn't have before. So there's a resurrection of the ancient knowledge, but then there's also the new stuff coming in. And I use new very lightly because I feel like everything is just there. It's just new in the sense that we, in our current existence, may not have experienced certain technologies or knowledge before.
Well, yeah, and I'm one of those that believes, and I call it eternal knowledge. All the knowledge of the universe, past, present, future, is all there and is accessible to us. It's just a matter of basically tuning into that proper vibration and those sorts of things. So I had a question and I lost it in there while I was.
Oh, can I jump in real quick then?
Go ahead, Victoria. Yeah.
Okay. You were talking about sacred sites and how you need to be, or it's better when you're at certain places with the energy, the ley lines, all that kind of stuff. Would you say astrological aspects are just as important, like when certain planets come together or converge, the energies more significant?
They can do, but again, I mean, it depends on what layer you are perceiving reality from. So again, astrology is time-based, and it sits in more of the fourth dimensional sort of frame. And if you're in a vibration where you're still interacting with time in that way, then the astrological alignments can be very significant. But if your vibration is already in a fifth dimensional vibration, you don't actually get impacted so much. And I personally went through this journey quite viscerally, because earlier on, my God, every full moon and every new moon and it was a Mercury retrograde comes around, and it was just like all this stuff. And then eventually you lift your vibration and you say, actually, doesn't need to affect me, because when you have that core center within you, that influence of that that movement actually reduces, and so you can get to a point where you actually become the portal. You're the portal, right? You don't need even to go to the sacred site. You become the portal, and now you're just in that vibration and you're creating from that space. And then it's not so much, you're still in co-creation and harmony with everything. And so we lift up into that higher harmonic. So there's a harmony with everything, but it's not so much, oh, this planet's going to come in and like rock my life. It's just like, oh yes, there's an awareness of the natural cycles and the rhythms, but there's a centeredness in that allows you to just experience with a more harmony and connection rather than like an impact like that.
Okay. Will we move to like a 60 and a 70 and 80, 90? Do we keep going on as we progress?
We can. And that's, I do feel a lot of this has been instigated by Gaia herself, who is a soul. She's a beautiful soul inside this body. She gives us love every day, unconditionally. Doesn't matter what we're doing. Doesn't matter if we have wars or whatever. She just keeps radiating that love. And when you take the time to connect from your heart to the heart of Gaia and you feel that vibration, you can sense that she's actually already in that higher frequency. In fact, sometimes I do connect into the heart of Gaia and I feel her in her crystalline core center, and she's already in that higher vibration. And if she wants to continue the ascension beyond 5D, then that's something that she will choose. And then those who want to go along for the ride will go along with that. But it's a collective co-creation. So I do believe that there is a possibility for that to happen. We may also decide in 5D that we want to stay there for a while and just enjoy and experience it. So who knows?
Okay. Are you connecting through like the Alta Major or through a higher consciousness, or is it just happening?
Well, what do you mean?
You have the chakras, and then at the Alta Major is like the energy point at the base of your.
Yeah, we call it something different. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I know what you're talking about.
It's your gateway to the higher consciousness.
It's the one down here, right? It's the well of dreams chakra. Yeah. So there are lots of ways to connect, and the chakras, they obviously support our energy field, and they give us the ability to transcend through the physical body and have more of these mystical experiences. A lot of people will say that it's either through this or through the third eye that the connection happens. I would actually say it's through the heart, because the seat of soul is in the heart. So when you want to connect to your inner temples and get that next level of really expanding out to all of these different races and these connections, it's through the heart center. And so we go into the inner heart, into the inner temples. The other chakras will support that, but I feel like it is actually through the heart gateway that we do that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, fantastic. Well, we are starting to get down toward the end of our show. It's gone by fast. A lot of wonderful information from you, Eesha. But you have a event that is coming up here, so I want to make sure that we plug this for you before we say goodbye. We got about 10 minutes left here, but Contact in Consciousness, and it looks like you have an absolutely wonderful lineup here, June 21st. So can you tell us more about this event?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's a 2-day event, June 21st and 22nd for those of you in the Americas. For the Australians, it'll be 1 day later. We have our headliner, Ross Coulthard, who's coming in as a journalist to share about the latest in disclosure. We also have Alan Steinfeld, who is chairing our panel for the events. We have incredible speakers who are going to be sharing about this idea of contact and how we can take contact into our own hands. And one of the reasons why we created this specific summit is because we wanted to give people an opportunity to bring the worlds of disclosure and consciousness together. Because sometimes they sit in different camps. You got the people who are like, oh, we're going to talk about disclosure and about government disclosure, which is fine. There's a time and place for all of that. And then you've got the experiencers who are just like, I'm just going to meditate and be a starseed. And like, let's bring that together. Like, surely we're trying to discover the same thing here. So we are bridging those worlds in this event. We are going to have people like Ross Coulthard coming in with the journalistic aspect of it, and then some experiences like Vivian Chauvet, who's a Arcturian ambassador. And we're just going to bring all of that conversation together to see if we can just continue that conversation and keep finding answers to this idea of how can we make contact and how can we continue this evolution for ourselves as a human race.
Yeah, that's fantastic, because it does seem like, when you're talking about disclosure or contactees or experiencers or, people that are working in the consciousness field, it seems like everybody has their own like little camp. And to me, that it is, my platform is Connected Universe. So, to me, all these things are connected. So that's wonderful that you're doing something like this.
Yeah, and we're having it on the solstice too, because as you said, sometimes the dates will give a little bit of a boost, and so we hope that during the solstice we create an uplifting conversation. And one of the things that we love to do at most of my events actually is we have conversation, but we also have experiences. So in this one, we have Peter Maxwell Slattery coming in to do a CE5 as part of our event. So not only will we discuss it, we're also going to have the experience of contact during the solstice event.
Wonderful.
What were those dates? What were the dates again?
21st and 22nd of June. So it's just coming up next weekend during the solstice.
And how do people get more information about that? Sorry, we overlap there, Victoria. How do people find out more information about this and sign up?
Yeah, there is a website. Did we send it to you? We can post it in the link.
Yeah, the link would be great. I have actually, I think you did. I'll put it down in the description. So I know I have your website down in the description, but I'll make sure.
And also we have the links on our, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you can find the link because we put pictures of the summit coming up and you can find it there as well.
Yeah, fantastic. How often are you doing events? Seems like you have things like this pop up time and again.
Yeah, quite often. So our summits we do a couple of times a year. We usually, we've got this one coming up. Then usually the 11/11 gateway is a really big one for us. Last year we had 48 hours of rolling activations and experiences, breath work. It was fantastic. So that will be coming up later in the year too. And then the other event that we have is 5 days to 5D. So www.5days-to-5d.com using the number 5. That is our monthly event that we have, which is it's a 5-day immersion into higher consciousness. And we talk a little bit about the in-heart meditation. It's an introductory event and people can come along to that as well.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wonderful. So it sounds like you have a lot going on, which is absolutely incredible. So Victoria, seems like you had one more question in there.
No, I was just thinking, isn't that someone's birthday? June 21st?
No, it would be July.
July. So I was going to say you could take yourself for a birthday present.
Yeah, no,
that would be wonderful.
But close enough. So, all right. Well, Eesha, thank you so much for a wonderful, wonderful conversation. This is definitely enlightening. I think we all learned a lot this evening. So again, that's eeshapatel.com, and I'll put the link to the event down there as well in the description. So anywhere else that people can find you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, mostly I'm doing my events. So if you come along to an event, that's probably the best place. But you can check out the website, eeshapatel.com. You can follow us on socials. Yeah, a few places to get connected.
Fantastic. So, all right, everybody. Appreciate you all joining us this evening. Those who are listening to the podcast version of this later, please join us every Wednesday night, 8:00 p.m. Eastern time for the full experience here. Those that are on the public side, we are going to bid adieu. Those that are members of the Connected Universe portal, stay tuned for the after show. We're going to kick to there straight after this. So until next time, if time really exists.